The Grand Galactic Council Chamber, carved deep into the breathing stone of Orion Prime, felt different that day. It had always been a place of pride, a shining symbol of unity where thousands of species gathered, but today every corner carried a strange heaviness. It felt as if the air itself refused to move, as if something invisible pressed down on every chest. Diplomats entered the hall in silence, their steps slower, their eyes scanning the shadows, their hearts beating in rhythms they couldn't control. Even the oldest species who lived for millennia felt like children inside a storm. The chamber held 9,000 seats arranged in rising circles around the central platform, where the leaders made decisions that shaped the galaxy. But instead of calm discussions and proud speeches, today the hall buzzed with fearful whispers. Armored reptilian ambassadors thumped their tails nervously on the metal floor. Soft-furred species curled their ears tight against their heads. Light-born species dimmed their glow so much that the room felt darker, colder. Telepaths clutched their temples as strange waves moved through the air. They all stared at the giant holoscreen floating above the center like a silent moon. One message blinked in large red letters. Humanity has rejected all negotiations. The message repeated again and again, each repetition cutting deeper into the hall. No music, no explanation, no official signature. Just a cold truth delivered like a knife. It didn't matter how many times the ambassadors read it. Their minds refused to accept it. Humans, the species known for endless talking, endless diplomacy, endless patience, had said no. Not maybe, not later, not after discussion, just no. Some ambassadors whispered in fear. Some shouted at their assistants. Some checked their translators again and again, unable to believe the meaning. Some argued humans were bluffing. Some claimed humans were preparing a massive war. Others believed humans were hiding a weapon older than any empire. None of them knew the truth, and their fear grew like a slow fire crawling across the room. Counselor Vrylock, the eldest of the leaders, stood at the center podium. His skin changed colors with emotion, and today it shifted into a pale gray, color of shock, color of danger. He looked tired. Not physically tired, but soul-deep tired. He had lived through 6 Star Wars, for collapses of empires, 3 cosmic plagues, and many uprisings, but he had never seen anything like this. He kept staring at the message on the screen because he knew something the others didn't. He had seen the original, unedited message. The one Earth sent before this notice. The one that terrified him so deeply he couldn't breathe for a full 30 seconds. It wasn't sent by human diplomats. Not by generals. Not by presidents or scientists. Not even by the Human Council. It was sent by a human boy. Just a boy. Barefoot. Quiet. Soft-spoken. Maybe 16. No armor, no badges, nothing special. Just ordinary human clothes, messy hair, calm eyes. Behind him was Earth's flag, but he did not stand like a soldier, nor like a leader. He stood like someone carrying a story too heavy for any child, and that broke Vrylock's heart in a way he could not explain. He had seen many messages of war, many speeches of destruction, many threats delivered with broken pride. But the boy's message was not a threat. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was silence given shape. The boy looked straight into the camera, his eyes calm, his breathing steady, his voice low but clear. We refuse negotiation. There will be no talks. That was all. No anger, no demand, no aggression, just truth spoken with the sadness of someone who had already seen too much. But the part that shook Vrylock to his core was the eyes. For a single moment, barely a blink, something shifted inside those eyes. Not reflections, not the room, not Earth. It was something too big for a child to hold. Stars moved inside the pupils like swirling storms. Whole galaxies glimmered like silent tears. Time itself bent around his gaze. Some ambassadors who watched fainted on the spot. Telepaths ran out of the room screaming. Even species immune to psychic influence trembled. Something ancient, something powerful, something older than the council, had spoken through a human child. When the message ended, the holo shut down abruptly. No signature, no explanation, just the feeling that the galaxy had changed. The chamber lights flickered at that moment, dimming as if the building was afraid too. A deep vibration ran through the walls, shaking dust from carvings created thousands of years ago. Telepaths gasped, clutching their heads, feeling their minds pulled by an unseen gravity. "What is happening?" an ambassador shouted. "It's an interference," another yelled. "No," Counselor Vrylock whispered, barely audible. "This is not human technology. This is something else." The center alarm suddenly activated with a sound that felt like thunder cracking the heart of the world. The floor shook, the pillars trembled, the air vibrated. Everyone froze, because that alarm had only one purpose: to warn the galaxy that extinction-level danger was approaching. It had not sounded in 40,000 years. Emergency protocols flashed across the walls. Shields locked the chamber. Every exit sealed. No one could leave. The Council had entered full crisis mode. A mode used only when negotiation is impossible, when diplomacy is useless, when survival becomes the only priority. "Begin the vote," Vrylock commanded, voice shaking. "Activate the galaxy-wide emergency protocol." Shock traveled like lightning across the room. Arguments exploded. Species shouted at each other. Some begged to surrender to Earth immediately. Others demanded a preemptive strike. Others accused humans of hiding a cosmic weapon. But fear overshadowed everything. The vote passed in less than a minute. 97% yes. Activate emergency protocol. The alarm deepened. Red lights flashed like bleeding stars. Galaxy-wide alerts were transmitted instantly. Borders shut. Fleets mobilized. Civilizations prepared for evacuation. Ancient weapons sealed in vaults lit up for the first time in ages. The galaxy prepared for an enemy it could not see, could not understand, could not predict. And none of them understood the truth. Humans had not declared war. Humans had not threatened anyone. Humans had not moved a single ship. They had only said no talks. Silence from humans was more frightening than all the wars combined. As the council chamber shook again, Vrylock instinctively looked toward the ceiling. He didn't know why. Something told him to, and he froze. The hollow screens glitched. Static spread across the walls. A shadow moved across the projection like a wave. Sensors outside Orion Prime detected an unknown force. The readings were impossible. Class: beyond classification. Origin: unknown age, unknown nature, unknown count, uncertain. The sensor officer's voice trembled over the comm. "Sir, it's not a ship. It's not multiple ships either. It's something so massive our scanners detect its presence before it arrives." A cold wind moved through the chamber, though there was no wind. The air pressed against lungs. Hearts skipped. Lights dimmed to a fearful glow. Then, for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy heard the sound that marked the beginning of the end. Unidentified force entering Council territory. Every ambassador in the room felt the same thing. A deep pain in the soul, a pressure that felt like the universe itself was staring at them. Counselor Vrylock whispered the words no one wanted to hear. "The humans are coming." Fear moved faster than light. Before the council could take a second breath, the news had already spread across 14 star systems, then 40, then 100. Entire planets learned the same sentence at the same moment. Humans refused negotiation. The words traveled through starships, markets, temples, military bases, research facilities, homes, streets, and underground cities. Every species heard it. Every species reacted. The panic grew like a living creature sprinting through galaxies. The more beings spoke of it, the more fear rose, the more details twisted, the more theories exploded into existence. Some planets shut down communications immediately. Some started preparing weapons. Some cried. Some laughed nervously. Some prayed to gods who had not answered in 10,000 years. Even the species who claimed they feared nothing felt their spines grow cold. On the desert world of Krillin, giant sand titans stopped moving and listened. On the ice planet Tlaker, the sky itself froze for a second. On the silent moon of Vol 7, the priests burned old scriptures of prophecy. On the floating city of Kar, the citizens hid under metal floors even though they did not know why. Everywhere, the same whisper spread. What pushed the humans to break? What did the council do? What are they planning? Is this the beginning of war? But the worst rumor came from the outer colonies. It wasn't humans. It was something behind them. That rumor grew so fast that even council spies could not control it. They tried removing the messages, shutting down media, controlling broadcasts, blocking signals, but fear moved in ways no technology could predict. Inside the deep archives of the council, a cold, dark labyrinth of forbidden knowledge, 3 scholars sat around an ancient hologram. Their faces were pale. Their hands shook. The hologram showed images from thousands of years ago. Ruined worlds, burned cities, empty civilizations, entire species erased without a trace. No ruins remained, no survivors, only a symbol carved into the stone of destroyed planets. A human handprint, burned into solid rock. It glowed like a warning across time. One scholar whispered, voice cracking, "Humans didn't destroy these worlds. They weren't even advanced enough during these times. But something marked their symbol here. Something connected to them." Another scholar shook his head. "The council hid these records because we could not explain them. We thought it was an enemy trying to frame humans. But what if it wasn't? What if the humans never knew their own history?" The third whispered, "What if there is something in them? Something sleeping? Something awakened?" The 3 scholars backed away from the hologram as the handprint seemed to flicker with faint light, like a heartbeat pulsing through stone. They alerted the council, but by then rumors had already taken their own form. Children whispered it on playgrounds. Old warriors whispered it in military barracks. Smugglers whispered it in hidden tunnels. Priests cried it in temples. Humans don't need weapons. They are the weapon. In the outer rim sector, where colonies often heard news last, the panic erupted first. Ships left ports without clearance. Families abandoned homes. Leaders tried to calm their people, but words could not soothe the fear that felt like it came from the stars themselves. On the planet Lorien, the ruler addressed millions, standing on a glowing platform. "We are safe," she said. "Humans are peaceful." But right as she said the words, "humans are peaceful," the entire sky flickered like someone turning off the universe for 1 second. Darkness swallowed the planet, and every being screamed. Lights returned. The ruler tried continuing her speech, but her voice shook uncontrollably. We must stay calm." No one listened. On the moon station Talvor, workers refused to continue their jobs. They locked the station, sealed the docking bays, and waited for orders. When none came, they waited for death. In the massive ocean world of Lycra, the population of 10 billion aquatic beings swam into the deepest trenches, hiding in darkness, hoping it would protect them from whatever was approaching. Everywhere, the same fear returned. Why did humans say no? What do they know that we don't? Even the Council's strongest allies, species who trusted humans for centuries, began withdrawing their support. The Zyral Collective canceled trade. The Ventran Alliance recalled their ambassadors. The gentle Silvora species, known for healing and peace, closed their borders for the first time in history. Fear was not a rumor anymore. It was a storm. Meanwhile, inside the military core of the Council, admirals argued. Their voices echoed across steel corridors and command rooms heavy with tension. "Humans must be forced to talk," shouted Admiral Korth, his armor shaking from anger. "And if they refuse?" asked Commander Yatari quietly. Korth froze for a moment. Then his voice softened into dread. "Then we prepare for war. Against humans?" Yatari asked. Korth looked down. "Against whatever stands behind them." Those words made every officer in the room grow pale. No one knew what stood behind humans. No one understood the message sent by the human boy. No one understood the stars in his eyes. No one understood why the universe reacted. And no one understood the strange signal now echoing through every star system. It wasn't a transmission. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't an attack. It was something else. Something ancient. Something alive. Something waiting. In the shadows of the council's surveillance room, an intelligence officer whispered, "The signal feels like a heartbeat." "A heartbeat of what?" his partner asked. The officer's voice trembled. "A heartbeat of something bigger than our galaxy." They both stared at the screen where faint, rhythmic pulses flashed gently. Each pulse made the air vibrate softly. Each pulse made something in their minds feel cold. When the council gathered again for an emergency discussion, panic was visible on every face. It wasn't the panic of rebellion or political collapse. It was the panic of a galaxy realizing it might not be the center of power anymore. An ambassador from the icy planet Valor slammed his fist on the railing. "We must send fleets to Earth immediately. We cannot let humans control this narrative." A glowing energy being answered quietly, "We cannot control what we do not understand." The reptilian ambassador hissed, "Then we attack before they do." A bird-like species screeched, "Are you mad? If humans refuse to talk, they are already past diplomacy." A soft-voiced amphibian ambassador whispered, "We made a mistake. We pushed them too far. Now they will not speak." Arguments exploded again. The chamber became a storm of fear, emotion, and desperation. No one listened to anyone. No one cared about facts. They only cared about survival. When silence finally returned, Counselor Vrylock stood once more. His voice was soft but firm. "Listen to me, everyone. The galaxy does not panic when humans speak. It panics when humans grow quiet." Everyone froze, because they knew he was right. Humans talked, always negotiated, always tried to find peace. But humans had shown one truth throughout history. When humans fell silent, war followed. Vrylock continued, "We do not fear their ships. We do not fear their weapons. We fear the silence behind their voice. Something pushed them beyond the point of negotiation. Something we do not see." The ambassadors looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Something woke up in the humans," Vrylock said quietly. "Or something woke up with them." His words settled into the chamber like cold mist, creeping into every heart, every mind, every soul. Beyond the walls of the council chamber, in the dark stretch of space bordering the human territories, something massive moved, slow, patient, unstoppable. The scanners detected it before the eyes did. The stars dimmed slightly. Light bent in ways that broke every known law of physics. Rumors had turned into fear. Fear turned into panic. Panic turned into truth. The truth that no one wanted to say out loud. Humans refused to negotiate because negotiation was no longer needed. Something else was speaking for them. Something ancient. Something awakened. As the galaxy trembled, one message circulated quietly through hidden networks, through back channels, through encrypted whispers. "This isn't the humans' fear. This is the galaxy's fear of humans." And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy understood. The silence of humanity was the beginning of something far worse than war. For hours, the council chamber shook under arguments, fear, and confusion, but none of that mattered anymore. Because eventually the moment came that every ambassador dreaded. The moment the council replayed the original message from Earth, the one from the human boy. The giant holoscreen rose slowly, humming with an unsettling echo. The room fell silent. Not normal silence, this was graveyard silence, the kind that feels like air is afraid to move. Even species who didn't understand human emotions could sense something tragic approaching. Counselor Vrylock whispered, "Play it." The lights dimmed, and the boy appeared. A simple human boy, barefoot, hair messy, clothes plain, no armor, no rank, no special symbols. Just an ordinary teenager standing in front of Earth's flag, looking like someone dragged into the center of the galaxy against his will. His hands were behind his back, his shoulders straight but not stiff, his expression calm but not cold. It was the calm of someone who already accepted something heavy. His voice, when it came, did not roar. It did not threaten. It did not tremble. It flowed soft, steady, like a whisper that knew exactly where it was going. "We refuse negotiation. There will be no talks." It was only one sentence, only a few words, But those words carried a tear inside them. Small, invisible, painful. The boy did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He did not show pride. He didn't even look powerful. He looked sad, deeply sad. Sad like someone who had seen an entire sunrise die. The ambassadors leaned forward, confused and scared. Why sadness? Why heartbreak in his voice? Why did he look like a child forced to deliver a message too big for any human to carry? One reptilian ambassador covered his mouth with a trembling claw. A feathered ambassador folded her wings tight to calm her fear. A telepathic species backed away from the screen, whispering, "No, not again. Not this feeling," because telepaths felt everything. And what they felt inside the boy was not hatred. Not war. Not anger. It was grief, deep grief that didn't belong to a child. Then it happened. The blink. That one impossible moment. The moment the galaxy broke. Because in that single blink, something moved inside the boy's eyes. Something no human, no alien, no machine could create. The pupils widened slightly. The light changed. And then, stars appeared inside the darkness. Real stars. Moving. Spinning. Colliding. Reforming. Timelines bending like rivers. Nebulas breathing like living creatures. Spiral galaxies floating like lost memories. Every telepath screamed. Every empath collapsed. Every energy being dimmed to survival mode. Even species with no concept of fear felt their hearts freeze. Because something ancient was looking through the boy. Something that existed before the council. Before the galaxy. Before recorded time. It didn't speak. It didn't roar. It didn't threaten. Simply looked. And that look felt like judgment. The boy blinked again. The stars vanished. His eyes returned to simple human brown, soft and tired. But damage was done. The galaxy had seen something it was never meant to see. A soft glow appeared behind him, barely visible unless one looked very closely, like a shadow that carried its own light. The boy spoke again, softer this time, almost like a whisper escaping a broken heart. "You forced us for too long. You never listened. Now we will not speak." The council chamber filled with a deep, suffocating silence. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe. Even machines paused, as if they too were struck by fear. Because this was not a threat. This was a decision. Final one. A small amphibian ambassador whispered shakily, He is just a child. How can a child carry something like this?" A bird-like ambassador answered in a trembling voice, "Because he is not speaking alone." That truth sank into every being in the chamber like cold poison. The message ended. The hollow shut off. And for a few seconds, the chamber remained frozen. Not even heartbeats were heard. The silence felt alive, as if it watched them. Then the first ambassador broke. He cried. A full-grown, armored warrior species, taller than 3 humans, stronger than a tank, collapsed to his knees and cried like a child. He had survived 10 wars. He had lost limbs and grown them back. He had watched entire cities burn. But nothing had ever scared him like the eyes of a human child. Next came another ambassador. Then another. Soon half the chamber held their heads, trembling uncontrollably, because they did not fear humans. They feared what humans carried inside them, what had awakened inside them. Counselor Vrylock forced himself to speak even though his throat felt tight. He is not a soldier. He is not a leader. He is not chosen by humans. Then who chose him? Someone whispered. Vrylock lowered his eyes. Something older. Something that humans cannot control. Whispers filled the air again. What is it? Is it a weapon? A god? A machine? A cosmic force? No one knew. And that made it worse. Because the galaxy had archives of thousands of ancient threats. Planet eaters, star feeders, dimension breakers, void creatures. But none of them ever used a human child as a messenger. None ever used sadness instead of violence. None ever carried the weight of past extinction inside a simple teenage blink. Then, as the ambassadors tried to recover their breath, an intelligence alert flashed across the chamber. New signal detected. Source, unknown. pattern, heartbeat frequency. A heartbeat, but not a human heartbeat. Not an alien heartbeat. Not electronic. It was the heartbeat of something massive, so massive that scanners trembled trying to understand it. The vibration ran through the walls, through the floor, through the skin, through the bones. Every ambassador felt it inside their chest like someone knocking gently on their soul. One energy-being ambassador whispered in a flickering voice, "That is not a signal. That is presence. Presence. Not a ship. Not a weapon. Not a message. Presence." Something enormous had awakened. Something that moved when humans said no talks. Something that watched through the boy's eyes. Something that answered the galaxy's arrogance with silence. The telepaths huddled together, trembling. One of them whispered, "I touched the edge of that presence when the boy blinked. It feels like a sky that never ends." Another telepath added in a shaking voice, "And it feels like it has waited a long time for this moment." The council chamber descended into another wave of panic. Various species shouted, fought, cried, collapsed. Some ambassadors demanded immediate surrender to humans. Others begged for fleets to attack Earth before it was too late. But none of it mattered, because everything changed when the final alert flashed across the chamber. Detection. Unknown mass entering council territory. Description. Beyond classification. Reaction. Unpredictable. The chamber once again grew silent, heavier than before. Counselor Vrylock felt his hands shake. His voice barely escaped his throat when he whispered, "This boy, this message, this silence, it is not a warning." He looked around the hall with defeated eyes. "It is the beginning." The council chamber, already drowning in fear, exploded into full chaos the moment the unknown mass entered council space. Every ambassador stood, shouted, cried, or froze. The great hall, once a symbol of order, now felt like a graveyard with voices echoing inside a tomb. The red warning lights flashed again and again, painting every face with the color of blood. Arguments erupted immediately. The galaxy's political heart cracked in half. On one side stood Group A, the fearful aggressors, species known for strength, fleets, and ancient pride. They slammed their fists and claws and tendrils on the railing and demanded a preemptive strike. "We must attack Earth before they come closer," roared General Torque, his armor rattling. "If humans refuse talks, they are planning war. We cannot sit and wait." His voice shook, not from anger, but from terror too deep to hide. Beside him, the insectoid ambassador clicked her mandibles rapidly. "The silence of humans is not peace. It is preparation. We cannot trust them. Attack now or we will regret it." The group behind them stamped their feet, raising their weapons in frustration. On the opposite side stood Group B, the terrified pacifists. They were species who knew fear better than pride. Their bodies trembled. Their voices broke. "We cannot attack humans," cried Ambassador Silly Ra, her glowing body flickering like a dying candle. "If we attack, whatever stands behind them will awaken fully." You saw the boy's eyes. You felt the presence inside that message. "We cannot challenge that." Another ambassador, a tall, feathered creature, placed a shaking hand over her chest. "We must surrender immediately. We must apologize. We must kneel if needed. We must show we do not want war." Her words caused an uproar. "You want to surrender to humans? You want our species to kneel? You want us to abandon the council?" She shook her head desperately. "I want us to survive." Millions of years of pride broke that day because fear was too heavy. Counselor Vrylock tried to speak, but the noise was too loud. The chamber shook with arguments. Voices collided like meteors. No one listened. No one cared about logic or diplomacy. They cared about survival. The galaxy was splitting in half and no one could stop it. Then the doors slammed open. Everyone turned. A refugee ship from the distant Rim 13 Empire had arrived, its hull covered in scorch marks, its engines barely functioning. It crashed into the council's landing bay, and emergency workers rushed inside. Moments later, soldiers were carried into the chamber. Charred armor, burned faces, trembling hands. A smell of smoke and fear entered with them. These were not civilians. These were elite soldiers of a powerful empire known for strength equal to titan beasts. Yet now they looked like broken children hiding from nightmares. Medical bots tried to stabilize them, but the soldiers pushed them aside. They wanted to speak, needed to speak. Their commander, a giant being with 4 arms and skin like dark iron, fell to his knees in front of the council. His voice cracked as he whispered, "We attacked a human outpost." The room fell silent instantly. Even the warning lights seemed to pause. Every ambassador leaned forward, breath locked inside their throat. The commander continued, voice breaking like shattered stone. "We fired first. We wanted to force talks. We wanted them to respond, to show fear, to negotiate." He lifted his trembling hand. "But when we fired, the sky changed." The words froze every heart. "What do you mean?" Counselor Vrylock asked quietly. The commander's eyes widened, haunted by a scene burned into his memory. The stars bent, and the light turned black. A low gasp spread across the chamber. The commander shook violently. "Our ships stopped moving. Our weapons died. Our minds felt something touch them. Something that looked at us like insects." He fell forward, hands hitting the floor. "We did not see humans. We saw something behind them. Something that came when they refused to speak." The soldiers behind him curled into themselves, shaking, whispering the same word. "Silence, silence, silence." Everyone in the chamber stepped back. The reptilian general stuttered. "Was it a human weapon?" "No," the commander whispered. "It was not metal, not fire, not energy. It was presence. Something stood behind the humans, watching. And when we attacked, it simply looked at us." The bird-like ambassador covered her mouth. No one looked at enemies that way, unless the difference in power was too vast to measure. Counselor Vrylock closed his eyes for a moment. He already suspected something like this, but he never wanted confirmation. The room erupted into panic again. Group A, who wanted war, now shook with doubt. Group B, who wanted surrender, now felt even smaller. One ambassador screamed, "If we attack humans, that presence will destroy us." Another shouted, "If we do nothing, humans will come anyway." Another cried, "What does the presence want?" Another whispered, "Why did it choose a human boy?" No one had answers. Some ambassadors fell to their knees. Some prayed. Some begged for guidance. Some accused the council of hiding truths. Some accused humans of manipulating ancient forces. Some accused each other of creating this disaster. The chamber was breaking. Fear was mixing with confusion, confusion mixing with guilt, guilt mixing with cosmic dread. Too much for a galaxy to handle. Then the chamber lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed completely. A deep vibration moved through the walls, shaking banners, tables, even the giant pillars. The screens froze. The energy cores hummed louder. An ambassador whispered, "It's happening again." The same signal. A telepath collapsed, screaming, "It's closer now. It's watching the council." The reptilian general grabbed his weapon. "Shields up. Prepare for attack." "No!" the glowing ambassador shouted. "Attack will make it worse." Counselor Vrylock raised his trembling staff and shouted louder than he ever had. "Quiet!" The words struck the hall like thunder. Silence returned. Heavy, thick, dark. Vrylock's voice was soft but carried weight of lifetimes. "Fighting among ourselves will end us faster than humans ever could." He looked around, eyes old, tired, and full of sorrow. "We pushed humans too far. We forced them again and again. We treated them as less. We controlled them. And now, their silence is louder than any weapon." Someone whispered, "Why did they choose silence?" Vrylock answered with a shaking voice. "Because silence is the last choice of someone who has already been hurt beyond repair." His words broke the room. Ambassadors cried openly. Warriors lowered their heads. Even machines in the room dimmed their lights, as if feeling shame. Vrylock continued, voice soft as dying starlight. Humans did not prepare for war. Humans did not prepare weapons. Humans did not seek revenge. They simply stopped speaking. He paused, and something in the universe heard that silence. Gasps filled the air. Whatever is approaching, he whispered, is not coming for war or victory. It is coming for balance, for correction, for justice. The chamber doors shook violently as another tremor hit the planet. Something massive had entered the star system. Something no one had ever seen before. Something that dwarfed fleets and empires. A cold, emotional weight pressed into every chest as the sensors finally identified the approaching force. The council didn't understand the readings, but they understood the feeling. Vrylok whispered the words that shattered the galaxy. Something ancient stands behind humanity now, and it has arrived. The emergency sirens had already spread terror across Orion Prime, but nothing prepared the council for what came next. For minutes, the great chamber shook under the weight of the unknown. Every sensor array screamed. Every satellite malfunctioned. Every communication channel carried static that felt almost alive. A coldness spread across the star system. Not physical cold, but something deeper, something felt inside the soul. Across 50 billion screens simultaneously, the same alert appeared. Unknown human vessels detected. The words alone made every ambassador freeze. Unknown? Humans had small fleets. Humans built slow ships. Humans used outdated drives. Humans never made unknown-class anything. So how? Before anyone could speak, the main hologram flickered violently, then sharpened into clarity. What they saw was not a single ship, not a small group, not a fleet in the traditional sense. It was a wall of darkness carved into shapes that defied logic. 12 massive vessels, so large they made moons look small, materialized near the outer border of council space. They did not fade in slowly or warp in with light trails. They appeared like shadows stepping into existence, as if they had always been there, hiding in the gaps between stars, waiting for the galaxy to notice. The ships were black. Not painted black, not metallic black, true black, the kind of black found in the spaces between galaxies. Light refused to touch them. Stars around them dimmed. Even cosmic dust bent away, as if afraid to go near. Each ship had markings not readable by any known language. They were not glowing. They were not etched. They looked burned into the hull like scars. The closest cameras zoomed in. The ambassadors gasped. The markings were ancient human symbols. Symbols older than Earth's recorded history. Symbols believed to be myths. Symbols mentioned only in forbidden texts and nightmares of older species. One telepath fainted the moment he saw them. Another screamed, "These markings! They were seen on destroyed planets from thousands of years ago. Impossible! How can they be on human ships?" Counselor Vrylok whispered with a trembling voice, "These are the first fleet." The room fell silent. "The first fleet?" A glowing ambassador stuttered. "But that is legend. Humans never built such ships." "Not humans," Vrylok said, shaking his head slowly. "Not the humans we know. Something older. Something that disappeared. Something we never wanted to find." The largest vessel moved slightly, slow and heavy, like a god turning its head. The movement alone sent shockwaves into space. The surrounding stars flickered as if something enormous brushed against their light. A cold realization pierced the air. These ships were not built with Councilera technology. These ships were not built with any known science. These ships were awakened. The reptilian general pointed at the screen with shaking claws. "Scan them. Now!" The sensors tried, and failed. Every reading returned the same line. Technology, beyond understanding. Power source, unknown. Material, unknown. Danger, maximum. One machine species ambassador spoke in a metallic shiver. "Space around them is bending. Their mass is impossible. They are violating gravitational rules." Another added, "Weapons are not detected, which means they don't need any." Fear spread again. Across the galaxy, military commanders tried to raise their fleets, but ships malfunctioned. Engines refused to ignite. Weapons refused to charge. Communications refused to connect. It was as if the presence of the human fleet alone broke the will of machines. In the chamber, ambassadors trembled as the ships slowly aligned in a formation that looked ceremonial, almost holy, like ancient giants taking their place for judgment. A voice cracked from the intelligence booth. "Counselor, the ships, they are not powering weapons. They are watching." "Watching what?" someone asked. "Watching us," he whispered. The words felt like a blade sliding through silence. Because it was true. The ships did not move forward. They did not attack. They did not broadcast. They simply appeared and waited. Waited with patience older than the stars. A young ambassador from a small species began to cry quietly. "Why aren't they talking? Why won't they tell us what they want? Why are they just staring at us?" The bird-like ambassador whispered shakily. "Because humans are not speaking either." Everyone froze, because this was the terrifying answer. Humans, the species who used words as weapons, who used diplomacy as shields, who solved everything with discussion, were now silent. And silence from humans was more powerful than any weapon. Counselor Vrylock slowly walked to the edge of the podium, his hands trembling. These ships were not made for war. They were made for something else. "For what?" someone whispered. "For judgment." Gasps spread like wildfire. The 12 vessels stood still in the void, tall, dark, ancient, staring. Their shadows stretched like wings across starspace. A sickening weight settled on every ambassador's shoulders. Because everyone understood. This was humanity's first move. Not war. Not negotiation. Not diplomacy. Presence. Presence so powerful the galaxy froze. Presence that said, "We are here. We see you. We heard everything. We remember what you did." Presence that did not need weapons to terrify billions. A quiet tremor ran through the chamber as a small telepath whispered the truth with trembling lips. "These ships, they are not active. They are not attacking. They are not even moving. They are listening." A cold wind crawled through the room even though there was no wind. A soft hum echoed in the walls. Lights flickered again. The council tried sending signals. The ships did not answer. They sent warnings. The ships did not react. They sent calls for peace. The ships remained silent. A heavy emotion filled the chamber. An emotion no one wanted to name, because it felt like grief, not war. It felt like humans were mourning something instead of preparing to destroy. "Why won't they speak?" an ambassador asked, eyes full of tears. Counselor Vrylock exhaled shakily. "Because the galaxy has already spoken, and the humans have already decided." His voice cracked. Decided that they no longer owe the galaxy a voice. Another tremor rolled through the star system as the largest of the human ships turned slowly toward the council's region. Dark hull shimmering like a void inside a void. Every being in the chamber felt their soul tighten. Someone whispered the fear that lived in every heart. This is only the start. And for the first time in recorded history, the 12 ancient human dreadnoughts hung outside council space like judgment carved into the sky. They did not move. They did not speak. They did not power weapons. They simply existed. And their existence alone was enough to silence worlds, collapse governments, freeze fleets, and break the courage of billions. But what happened next shattered whatever hope remained. A tremor rolled across the chamber. Lights flickered. The giant holoscreens glitched, turning black, then white, then black again. Hundreds of ambassadors gasped and stumbled back as the air thickened, heavy like invisible hands pressing against lungs. A soft hum vibrated through the stone. At first it was faint like distant thunder. Then it grew louder, deeper, resonating inside bones, pushing through skin. Telepaths dropped to the ground, covering their ears though the sound was not physical. Energy beings dimmed so much their forms almost disappeared. And then, the broadcast began. Not from the human ships. Not from Earth. Not from any known source. The broadcast came from everywhere. Every screen, every wall, every satellite, every datapad, every ship window, every dust particle that could reflect light, all turned into the same image. The boy, the human boy, standing alone once again. His figure was clearer now, sharper, almost glowing softly, but not with light, with presence. His shoulders were relaxed, his expression gentle, but his eyes carried the same impossible depth as before, like someone who had seen 1,000 endings and survived everyone. His face looked tired, not from age, but from soul weight no child should ever carry. The entire council froze. Even the air felt afraid. He spoke, not loud, not aggressive, not angry, just human. You forced decisions on us for centuries. His voice was soft, almost fragile, but every syllable carried across the galaxy like a heartbeat. You told us who we could be, where we could go, what we could build, what we must obey. A small, glowing ambassador whispered. He speaks like he is carrying the pain of his entire species. The boy continued, without blinking. You expected us to negotiate even when you never listened. You expected us to obey even when the laws broke us. You expected us to bend, even when bending meant breaking. His eyes lifted slightly, and for the first time since the galaxy began, every species felt something unimaginable. Human sadness. Not the sadness of one person, but the sadness of all humanity. Compressed, heavy, ancient. A sadness that tasted like betrayal. A sadness that felt like someone trusted too many times and was hurt too many times. A sadness that said, "We tried everything before this moment." The boy continued, "We sent diplomats. We sent scientists. We sent peaceful envoys. But you ignored them all." He exhaled softly. "You threatened our colonies. You restricted our technology. You banned our expansion. You punished us when we grew. You punished us when we stopped. You punished us when we spoke." He lifted his hand slightly. "And now, we have stopped speaking." The chamber shook violently, not physically but emotionally. A pressure swept through the room. Some ambassadors fell to their knees. Some held onto railings for balance. Some cried without knowing why. Telepaths clutched their chests and screamed. They weren't reacting to the message. They were reacting to the truth inside it. Silence from humans was not silence. It was a boundary. The boy's expression softened with grief. "We do not refuse talks to punish you." He paused. "We refuse because there is nothing left to say." A deep, painful stillness filled the hall. Every ambassador felt it. The way people feel the last moment before a storm destroys a city. The way hearts know a truth before minds accept it. Then the boy lowered his hand and the universe bent. Literally. The stars in the background of the hologram distorted for a moment, swirling like liquid metal. Time itself rippled. Space shimmered. Every being watching felt a sudden pull inside their chest, like gravity had chosen to rearrange itself around the boy. This wasn't human power. This was something else. The being behind the boy, the presence that flickered in his eyes, awoke. The chamber lights blew out. Screens turned pure white. Walls cracked slightly. Air pressure dropped. Then the image stabilized again. And the boy said the words that turned fear into pure terror. "We did not come to negotiate." He lifted his eyes directly into the camera. Every species felt seen, truly seen, exposed, measured, judged. "We came to end what you started." A collective gasp rolled through the hall. Some ambassadors collapsed. Some screamed. Some fainted. Some froze like statues facing death. The reptilian general shouted, voice shaking, "And what? And what? What does he mean?" The bird-like ambassador cried, "He does not mean war. He means something bigger." The boy spoke again. "You created laws to control us. We let you. You created borders to trap us. We respected them. You created fear around us. We stayed silent." He exhaled. "But when you touched our children," the chamber froze so hard even the silence shook. "You crossed the one line that humanity will never forgive." Every ambassador's blood grew cold, because those were not political words, Not military words. Not diplomatic words. Those were sacred words. An oath. Promise. Curse. The boy continued, voice breaking. Not with anger, but with heartbreak. We asked you to stop. You did not. We warned you. You ignored us. We begged you. And you laughed. His eyes glimmered with something wet. A human tear. It slid down his cheek in the slowest, softest way, the way a star might fall from the sky. That single tear broke the galaxy, because no one had ever seen a human child cry on a political broadcast. And certainly not like this, not with the universe trembling behind the emotion. The boy wiped the tear softly, and then gravity shifted. Every being in the chamber was forced to kneel, not physically, emotionally, because it felt like kneeling was the only respectful thing to do. The boy didn't demand it. The presence behind him did. We gave you time, he whispered. We gave you patience. We gave you peace. And you gave us silence. He looked down for a moment, as if grieving. Then he looked up again. You will now live with the consequences of your choices. The screens flickered. The boy's image dimmed. And before fading away, he said the final sentence. Humanity does not rise in anger. Humanity rises when you leave us no other choice. The broadcast ended. The galaxy did not breathe. When the boy's final words vanished from every screen in the galaxy, the silence that followed was not silence. It was punishment. It was judgment. It was the sound of a billion hearts shattering under a truth they could no longer run from. The council chamber did not move for several seconds that felt like entire lifetimes. Ambassadors sat frozen, eyes wide, throats dry, minds shaking. Even the strongest species, those who boasted about fearlessness and courage, felt their bodies refusing to respond, as though the universe itself had pressed an invisible hand onto their shoulders. And then, everything failed. The first collapse came from the sky. The defense shields around Orion Prime flickered, stuttered, then died completely. The screen monitoring the human dreadnoughts glitched violently. Starships in orbit began spinning without control. Command stations blinked red, alarms screaming but powerless. Inside the council chamber, all communication devices shut down at the same moment. Hollow panels froze. Energy cores dimmed. The giant council emblems on the walls faded into darkness. It felt like the galaxy's breath had been taken away. A metallic ambassador shouted, "System failure! System failure across all sectors." A glowing energy being screamed, flickering weakly, "It's not failure. It's interference." The reptilian general slammed his claws onto the table, voice breaking. Interference from what? The answer arrived before anyone could speak. A low hum rolled through the chamber. Not mechanical, not technological, not from any ship, planet, or star. This hum did not belong to the galaxy. It came from the presence that had stood behind the human boy. Every ambassador clutched their chest. The sound felt like a hand gripping their hearts softly, firmly, warningly. Walls shook as if something enormous outside reality itself pressed against the atmosphere. Then the lights over Orion Prime went out. The entire star system dropped into darkness. Billions screamed. Across the galaxy, the same thing repeated. Starships lost gravity. Weapons powered down. Engines shut off. Drones froze mid-air. Artificial suns flickered. Space stations drifted into void. The council chamber doors tried to seal, but the systems died. The doors hung open, powerless. The galaxy's greatest fortress had become a silent cave. Ambassadors rushed to the windows facing the sky. What they saw ended whatever pride they had left. The human dreadnoughts had moved closer. Not by warping, not by thrust, not by speed. They slid through space as if space itself obeyed them. Their presence forced the stars to dim again. Gravity twisted around their hulls. Time stuttered. Reality bent like warm metal. One ambassador whispered, voice trembling, We cannot even comprehend their movement." Another sobbed, "This is not technology. This is dominion." But the worst moment came when they realized the humans weren't disabling systems. The galaxy itself was reacting to the human fleet. Counselor Vrylock collapsed into his chair, tears forming in the corners of his ancient eyes. We have no control. Not over our ships. Not over our defense. Not over anything. The amphibian ambassador whispered through shaking lips. Are humans doing this? No. Vrylock whispered painfully. This isn't humans. It's the presence behind them, and it is expressing its will. Suddenly, every being in the chamber felt something. A pull. Soft. Gentle. Unavoidable. They felt the need to kneel. Not because of fear. Not because of power. Not because of force. But because kneeling felt like the only respectful response to whatever stood behind the boy. Ambassadors fell to their knees one by one. Some cried while kneeling. Some screamed while kneeling. Some collapsed fully, pressing their heads to the floor. Even species who physically had no knees flattened their bodies to the ground, folded their limbs, lowered their heads, or dimmed their forms in submission. A trembling winged ambassador whispered, It wants us to understand, not to fear, to understand. An energy being flickered faintly. Understand what? Counselor Vrylock's voice cracked when he answered. That the humans did not choose this power. This power chose humans. The room dropped into deeper silence. He continued, voice breaking with truth he wished wasn't real. We feared humans because they survived everything. Because they adapted. Because they rose again and again. But now, we fear them because something older, wiser, and far more powerful stands with them. He lowered his head. And it is done protecting them quietly. A sudden rumble shook the entire chamber. The ground trembled as if Orion Prime itself was bowing. The dreadnoughts aligned into a perfect formation. 12 massive symbols of power no mortal mind could understand. Then the hum stopped. Every ambassador lifted their heads. The darkness felt heavier. The silence felt cruel. The stillness felt like a blade placed on the throat of the galaxy. And then, without warning, a single pulse of light flashed from the largest dreadnought. Not bright, not violent, just a pulse, a heartbeat. Every being felt it pass through them. Felt like someone touching their soul with 2 fingers. For a moment, they heard something inside that pulse. A whisper that did not speak in words but in raw feeling. A whisper that said, "Remember." Then the pulse vanished. Everything went dark again. Ambassadors collapsed again, panting like their souls had been dragged through cold water. 1,000 species began to cry without understanding why. Counselor Vrylock closed his eyes tightly. His voice was a whisper of absolute devastation. They are not attacking us. They are reminding us. The bird-like ambassador trembled. Reminding us of what? Vrylock opened his eyes slowly. He looked at the dreadnoughts. He felt the presence. He understood everything. That humanity does not ask for respect. Humanity earns it. Silence. Dead silence. And today, his voice cracked. Today, the galaxy finally understands what humans become when pushed too far. A young ambassador whispered, tears falling. What do we do now? Vrylock answered with the only truth left. We accept. We kneel. We survive. He lowered his head fully to the floor. Because this is not war. He swallowed hard. This is judgment. For long minutes after the pulse of light, the galaxy remained in absolute silence. Not ordinary silence, this one had weight. Pressed onto skin, into lungs, into bones, into the deep memory of every species watching. Felt like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone. The council chamber was a broken ruin of emotions. Ambassadors still knelt. Some sobbed quietly. Some stared at the floor with hollow eyes. Some couldn't stop shaking. No one dared stand. No one dared speak. Even the metal-bodied species dimmed their internal cores to the lowest level, as though afraid to shine too brightly. The dreadnoughts, 12 colossal shadows, floated unmoving. They did not prepare weapons. They did not advance. They simply existed like ancient gods carved into the void. And then every screen in the galaxy lit up. Not by command. Not by request. Not by signal, by presence. The boy appeared again. This time he wasn't on Earth. He wasn't standing in a room. He wasn't standing anywhere. He was surrounded by darkness so pure it made space look bright. Behind him, faint starlight swirled in gentle spirals, as if the universe itself was watching him speak. He looked the same, simple clothes, messy hair, soft eyes. But there was something new about him now, something deeper, something ancient. His presence filled the room like a tide rising slowly, quietly, until it touched every soul. He spoke softly. The galaxy is free now. The words hit harder than any weapon. He lifted his head slightly. Not under your counsel. Not under your laws. Not under your control. Ambassadors shivered. Some choked on their breath. He continued, voice calm and heartbreakingly honest. You ruled with fear. You made laws that hurt the weak. You forced obedience. You used power, not justice. His voice tightened with pain. You did not protect the small. You did not respect the free. You did not listen to the honest. He paused. And when humanity asked for fairness, you tried to silence us too. The boy lowered his eyes, and for a moment, the galaxy saw a sadness inside him so deep it felt like the afterglow of 10,000 heartbreaks. But when he spoke again, his voice carried strength that did not belong to a child. Today you are free. He glanced up, and his eyes glimmered. Not with stars this time, but with something even more powerful. Light. Pure, ancient, endless light. You will live without fear, without forced laws, without forced control. Behind him, the starlight thickened, forming patterns older than language, older than galaxies, older than creation. The ambassadors felt the air hum. Telepaths felt timelines shifting. Energy beings felt their cores warm. Every species felt something touching the deepest part of their existence. But hear this, the boy continued gently. Humans will not rule you. We will not control you. We will not become what you were. He breathed softly. But we will not bow again. The words cracked the chamber open. Ambassadors cried openly. Some whispered apologies even though the boy couldn't hear them individually. Some lowered their heads deeper into the floor. Some pressed their hands to their hearts in mourning. The boy looked around as if he were standing inside every council chamber, every home, every ship across the galaxy. You forced us into silence. You forced us into defense. You forced us into awakening. He lifted his hand slightly. The darkness behind him shifted, like a colossal being moving just out of sight, like the universe leaning forward to listen, like creation itself pausing. Then the boy spoke the final law. We will walk our path, and you will walk yours, but you will never again walk on us. Every ambassador felt their heartbeat stop for one tiny moment. That was not a threat. That was a promise. A rule set by something beyond any council. A rule written not by anger, but by truth. The boy lowered his hand, and the cosmic presence behind him softened, like a tide retreating with grace. He looked directly into the camera, and into every soul in the galaxy, and spoke his final words. For thousands of years you forced us to fear. Now you will learn to live without it. He blinked carefully, with the gentleness of someone who forgives but never forgets. Humanity does not seek revenge. He paused. Humanity seeks respect. The screens dimmed. The boy faded away, and the last sentence remained, hanging in light, in sound, in memory, in time. The galaxy's silence ends today. Then all screens went dark. The dreadnoughts slowly began to turn away. Not in retreat, not in threat, but in closure. They had said everything they needed to say. Something ancient had spoken through them. And now that the message was delivered, the universe felt lighter, but the galaxy felt smaller. The first ambassador to stand was a small being from a peaceful moon. Tears rolling down his cheeks, he whispered, "We survived, but we will never be the same." And he was right, because from that day forward, the galaxy walked differently, spoke differently, lived differently, because humanity, finally, had spoken without words.